Hello, welcome to White Daily Gardening and Worm Farm. Today we are going to be discussing our progress that we have made throughout the course of 2021, whether it is with our gardening or with our worm farming. Hi, Cece, how are you? Right, so we're going to be discussing the things that we have experienced. It has been a pretty crazy year, as most of you will admit. We've had all sorts of challenges. But hopefully, by discussing this, and if we feel so inclined, we can talk about how we overcome some of the challenges. We can talk about the successes that we've had, and hopefully, something that we say might be able to benefit others who have had a similar experience but not knowing how to deal with it, or even if we know how to deal with the problem that we face, sometimes someone else might have dealt with it in a different way. So now we'd learn another way that we can deal with some of the challenges that we face in our worm farming and gardening. Okay, so like I said before, it has been a pretty crazy year. And in general, I when it comes to gardening, I don't really start plants indoors except for the last 3 years I've been doing that. But for the most part, I would start the plants just a few weeks before the growing season started. But for 2021, I actually started plants early. In fact, I started so early, I started some of my plants in 2020. So, like my sweet potatoes that I know takes forever, I started those in 2020, November 2020. Hi, Brooklyn Giraffe, how are you? Yeah, so one of the things that, one of the reasons why I started some of my plants so early, because usually it is recommended that here in Saskatoon you start your plants indoors, say March, and then our growing season start the last week in May. But then even that sometimes is not enough for some of the plants. Depending on if you want to grow plants that just don't do well in this region, then you might have to start them pretty early. Let's see, Brooklyn says, I'm doing well, thank you, and Happy New Year. Hello. Yes, I hope you enjoyed your holiday too. It's good to know you're doing well. My sweet potatoes, they didn't turn out the way I wanted them to. But then I was growing sweet potatoes and I was growing purple Japanese yam. I started the purple Japanese yam, I would say, sometime January, February 2021 indoors. And I noticed that when I was transplanting my purple Japanese yam outdoors into the garden, those purple Japanese yam, one of them, the one that I started first, was actually producing in the container that I started them with in indoors. And I've had it for 4 months at that point in time when it started producing. And then when it was time to harvest those purple yams, I got quite a bit. So I'm going to be growing that again this year. But for my sweet potatoes, the one plant that I started in November, I got a sweet potato from it, but none of the others produced. And I think one of the mistake that I made with my sweet potatoes are one of is that I keep cutting slips from the original plant. So I was cutting slips all the way down until March. So the slips that I cut from the original plant in March, those slips didn't really have enough time, which is why I think they did not produce anything. And then some of them got killed by the fungus knots that I had to deal with. Let's see, Brooklyn says, I wish I could start seeds early. I don't have much indoor space. I live in a small apartment. I don't have a lot of space to start my indoor plants either. Yeah, but I can understand that apartments can be even trickier to start plants indoors. All I have is my windowsills that are not very deep, unfortunately, so I have to be using very small containers if I want to be growing on my windowsill. And sometimes those containers are so small that as soon as the plant starts to grow, there just isn't any way that you can up pot them because the windowsill is not wide enough that it can facilitate a larger pot. So that is one of the disadvantage that I face with starting things indoors. So one of the things that I did last year for 2021, after I harvested my 2020 crop, I built a shelving that was high enough where it would get the sunlight from the window and place it up against the window. So I was able to put a few plants on it, but then I noticed that all of the plants that I brought in for 2020 to overwinter, they died because they weren't getting enough sunlight. So that standard that I created is what I use to start my plants indoors, and I build it with a lower layer. And that lower level now I use my grow lights on it, and then I place it directly over the vent so that the plants could get the heat, and then I'd use my grow lights. But yes, having a small apartment can be a bit tricky to start plants indoors. Oh, hi, Mom. Oh, hi, Han. Sorry, I'm busy yapping away. Didn't get to say hi to you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I was impressed with my purple Japanese harvest, so I'm going to be planting more of them than I did in 2021. And for the sweet potatoes, I'm going to be planting less because I had lots of sweet potatoes that I planted, but I guess I started some of the slips too late, so I wasn't able to harvest anything from them. But the fact that I was able to harvest one from the first plant that I had is an indication that they can grow here, but it takes a really long time because that was started in November and it was harvested in September. So you know that that is 10 months. So sometimes it might not be feasible to start the sweet potatoes indoors because the amount of time that it requires for them to produce is just too much. So I'm going to be doing it, but I just think I'm gonna do like three sweet potato plants, and then for the purple Japanese yam, I don't really have a limit. Han says, my garden was a failure. Most of my plants were damaged by leaf uppers and leaf miners. I feel your pain, my dear. I had the same issues. I had the leaf miners, not the leaf miners, but the leaf hoppers. I saw just one of my peas had leaf miner, but outside of that, I didn't really have a problem with leaf miners because I got rid of the plant as soon as I saw that. But the leaf uppers, when I started seeing these tiny little creatures, I didn't really know what they were. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to do anything to them because I don't know if they're a friend or foe. That was my mistake because in no time, it didn't take them long at all. I have over 500 square foot of garden space. And in no time, those leaf hoppers took over practically every plant in my garden. So they pretty much did a number on my plants because by the time I did my research and found out what they were, the damage was already done because the plants have already developed the curly top virus. Unfortunately, curly top virus does not have a cure. So if your plants have curly top virus, then they can still produce, but then the plant will be stunted. The fruits can be stunted too, and there is just no cure. But one of the things that I know about worm tea, not the leachate, but the worm tea, is that it is good at helping plants that are not healthy. So I used the worm tea to treat the plants that were affected. So I was able to get a reasonable harvest, but not as good at it as it would have been if I didn't have the curly top virus to deal with. Let's see. Um, Brooklyn says, wow, that's almost 1 year. I had no idea. Gardening takes a lot of patience. It certainly takes a lot of patience. And the thing is, the sweet potatoes that I planted, it is sweet potato that came directly from Jamaica. So I use the water method to make it sprout. And then I planted the slips. But we have quite a few varieties of sweet potatoes in Jamaica, and we have some that they call the 3 month sweet potatoes because within 3 months you're able to harvest sweet potatoes. So when you buy the store bought sweet potatoes, you don't really know which one you're getting. So obviously I got the ones that takes forever. Forever it is when you have a short period of time to grow. Yeah, so I got the ones that take forever to grow. Unfortunately, it's not as if I have the option where I can request the ones that takes 3 months. That's not an option. You just have to take what you get from the stores. So anyway, it didn't really work out for the sweet potatoes, but I'll be trying just three of them this time around. See how that work out. If this year, when I try them, it is a failure, then I'm not even going to bother to try. And especially if I see where I had to use grow lights. The good thing though is that the sweet potatoes and the Japanese yam that I started indoors, I've never once used grow lights on them because I put them on my windowsill. So I've never, and even though they love heat and the temperatures can get pretty low here, but they did pretty well on the windowsill. They were looking good for the most part, apart from when the fungus knots took over, but they were looking good for the most part. Okay, and you didn't know what they were either, the leaf hoppers. Yes. So I learned my lesson because after I see what happened with the leaf hoppers, I started thinking one thing that is consistent is that the beneficial insects in our garden tends to be the larger type of insects rather than the tiny ones. That may not always be the case, but in most for the most part, it is the larger insects that are the beneficial ones. So if I see anything that is tiny, I'm going to treat it like a pest. And my recommendation is if you see any type of insects in your garden and you don't know what it is, don't wait. Do your research, ask questions, whether you're going to talk to other gardeners, whether on YouTube, Instagram, or ask Google or talk to other farmers in your area. But don't wait. Try to find out what it is as quickly as possible because once you wait, the damage can be extensive. Yeah, so that's it for my sweet potatoes and my purple Japanese yam. My tomatoes, I got a nice harvest of tomatoes, but I was quite disappointed because I was expecting far more based on the number of plants that I had. I was expecting far more, but with the leaf uppers and the curly top virus, there was just not much that could be expected. In fact, at one point in time, I was wondering if I would even have an harvest because these plants, I started my tomatoes in March indoors. They too had problems. Everything that I started indoors had problems with the fungus knots. And I was bottom watering, which is one of the remedies that they said that is how you prevent fungus knots. So I'll get back to that shortly. But the tomatoes, I started them indoors, and by the time they started flowering, they were just flowering for a really long time and not producing any fruits. Then they finally start producing fruits, and the fruits got big to the point where you know that okay, now is the time for it to ripen. Oh my lord. Those tomatoes were sitting there for months in that state where they look as if they're supposed to ripen, but nothing happened. They were just there, not ripening. So I thought, oh my goodness, it looks as if the winter is going to be here without my tomatoes ripening. So you know how I end up getting ripe tomatoes? I had to pick them off green and put them indoors, and then they ripen, but they would not ripen on the vine. I don't know if the curly top virus is what caused it, or if the weather had anything to do with it, because I know that sometimes the weather can affect how quickly or how long your fruits take to ripen. Let's see. Mom says it is not the potatoes. It's not that the potatoes take long. It's because of your climate. Sweet potatoes don't take longer than 6 months. Yes, that is what I know. That sweet potatoes really don't take a lot of time to grow. But man, it took forever here. Yes, sweet potatoes like very hot climate. Let's see. Han says I harvested quite a lot of tomatoes and I still have some. I picked most of them green as well. Okay. Yes, my tomatoes, I still have some. I have quite a lot in the fridge frozen. I don't make sauces with tomatoes and I don't pickle tomatoes or anything of the sort. I wanted tomatoes, my Roma tomatoes, I planted quite a lot of them because I was planning, oh yes, I'm going to make a lot of ketchup this year, but I didn't have enough where I could make a lot of tomato. I didn't even have enough to make ketchup, but I did have a reasonable amount because I've been eating tomatoes from then till now, and I still have some frozen in the fridge, but it wasn't enough for me to have for cooking and to make ketchup at the same time. So that was a disappointment with the tomatoes, even though I got a lot. My sweet peppers, oh Lord, don't even go there. That is a big disappointment because I had the sweet potatoes flowering from very early and it took forever for them to produce the fruits. And when the growing season ended, most of my sweet peppers that I harvested were not on the mature side. They were close to being mature, but they weren't mature enough. Yeah, so some of what I harvested end up being worm food because they, even though their size seem as if they were mature, they were still young. So my worms got to enjoy them. Sorry. Yes. So fungus knots. I said I would come back to the point about the fungus knots. Yes, my memory worked for once. Yes. So one of the ways that you prevent fungus knots is to bottom water your plants. My plants that I grow indoors have been bottom watering them. I still end up with fungus knots because I find that the fungus knot will crawl down the side of the pots, past the dry soil, and down to the wet, and then they will lay their eggs there. And what I learned this year is that the fungus knots do not destroy your plants. It is the fungus knots larvae that actually destroy your plants because these larvae feed on the root of your plants. So that is why my plants were looking sometimes as if they needed nutrients or they are getting too much nutrients because the colors were changing. So it looked as if it is getting either too much or too little nutrients. But then, whenever you go to hot pot your plants, you started seeing these little tiny larvae that tend to look dark silverish color, and those are the fungus knot larvae. Oh, hi, Helpy. I see that you made it. And there is someone else. I can't read that language. So I'm going to say hi to you, but unfortunately, I can't pronounce your name. Yes. Let's see. Anne says, I am overwintering my Jamaican sweet potatoes. Just one slip, and I have a shop bought sweet potato that started sprouting, so I am overwintering it as well. Okay, good. Yeah. So, my intention was to overwinter some of my sweet potatoes, but that's not happening. I fed them to my worms instead, and my worms had a field day with them. But and my purple Japanese yam, I fed all of the slips to the worm too. But then I noticed that within a few months of harvesting my purple Japanese yam, some of them started sprouting, so I planted the slips from it, or the sprouts, because I don't know if they qualify to be called slips yet because they're so tiny. And they are doing pretty well, so I'm gonna definitely have purple Japanese yam from the ones I had last year. For the sweet potatoes, I don't know. I have some of them that I just place in water, so they are there. But we'll see what happens with them. Okay, LP, you say this is a troll. Okay. In which case, I will get rid of it. Thanks for that. Let's see. LP says I've seen them in other lives. Okay. Okay, good to know. Thanks for that. Yeah, so what have been some of your gardening experiences? Now let's talk about my Jamaican Scotch bonnet. You guys know how I love my Jamaican Scotch bonnet peppers. So I started five of them in December 2020, and they took forever. They germinated quickly, but they took forever to start growing to any size. But then when they started growing, they started to look really, really nice. And I was just cherishing these five plants because I'm thinking five Scotch bonnet peppers. I'm gonna have a lot of Scotch bonnet to harvest. So I was all happy and everything. And then before the growing season start, I noticed that two of the Scotch bonnet peppers started flowering. So I'm like all excited now. Oh yeah, I was getting excited. And then I noticed that the plants were flowering, but they weren't producing any fruit. And I figure maybe because they were on the windowsill and not necessarily on the grow light, so I put them under grow lights for a little bit, but they never produced any fruit indoors. And then just before I transplanted them outdoors when the growing season started, I noticed that they weren't looking so happy. And then I realized that they too had the fungus gnats issue. So that was slowing the plants down. So when I transplanted them outside, some of the plants, they just never got any bigger than they were when I had them indoors. It was such a frustrating experience. And out of my five Scotch bonnet pepper plants, one plant, I was able to harvest three wishy-washy Scotch bonnet peppers. I don't even know if I can call those Scotch bonnet peppers, but that's all I was able to harvest from five plants. Now, when you talk about something that is disappointing, the Scotch bonnet plants would be it. But anyway, I already started some indoors at least. I sow the seeds, so we'll see how long it's going to take for them to germinate. I had them on the windowsill, but now I have them close to the heat vent instead because the seed needs the heat more than it needs the light. So once they germinate, then I will give them light. But for now, they're going to be staying close to the heat so they can germinate faster. Let's see. Okay, LP says, Joyce, that's interesting that sweet potatoes don't take that long in warmer climates. Okay. And Bookley says, how do you have a new favorite plant? Or do you have a new favorite plant or edible that you grew in 2021 for the first time? Let's see. Is there anything I grew for the first time in 2021? Yes, basil. I've never grown basil before. Oh, hi, Chanel. I've never grown basil before, and this time around, I planted lemon basil and sweet basil and from seeds, and then I saw at the lumberyard garden center that they had Italian basil, so I bought that. The Italian basil did pretty well. The others didn't do so well. None of them that I started indoors germinated, but the ones that I direct sow germinated. But because of the curly top virus, they didn't do well. But I grew basil for the first time. So I'm looking forward to growing more basil next year. Oh, well, this year. It's 2022 already. So I'm looking forward to growing basil this year. We'll see how that goes. And I'm interested to try various types of basil because it would be interesting to see what the difference is between them. And I wanted to grow lupini, if that's how it's pronounced, because I got some seeds from growing my own. And I didn't get around to plant it because you know how kids are. They see something, they take it and they play with it, and then it goes missing. So I was able to find the seeds again when the growing season was up. So I will be growing those this year. And then I also got some chocolate mint from her, so I'm going to be growing that this year. Let's see, Anne says my sweet potatoes are doing well too. I've got a few sweet peppers, which I'm overwintering. However, my Scotch bonnet peppers died. Yes, all the peppers that have been overwintering died. Um, Scotch bonnets died. I was trying to overwinter my balm chili and it did well, even though I didn't have it where any light is. It was just sending out branches constantly. But in the last 2 weeks, I noticed that one by one, these branches just start dying off, which is disappointing. But I have more of the seed, so I won't worry too much about it. The biggest when it comes to pepper, the Scotch bonnet, that is the ones that I want definitely to have. Because you see, I can get Scotch bonnet here sometimes, but not necessarily the Jamaican variety. And there are a lot of peppers I can get here, sweet peppers and all. So not too fussy about them, even though I'd like to grow them. But my Scotch bonnet, my Jamaican Scotch bonnet, I definitely want to have those. So that is why I started so early because I want them to reach the stage where when they are ready to when I'm transplanting them outside, they are already in the stage where they are ready to produce. That way, chances are I'll be able to harvest them fully matured. Brooklyn says, mine is carrots. I grew them for the first time in 2021 and they came out great. I can eat grocery carrots. I can't eat grocery store carrots anymore. I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean because every time I plant my carrot, this year carrot was disappointing to be honest. They are sweet, they're long, but they're not as fat as they used to be, and they didn't produce as much as they would in previous years. So this is the first time I'm growing carrots, and I'm not very pleased with the result. But then, with the curly top virus affecting practically all my plants, I can't really complain too much about the harvest. In fact, I have carrots even up till now. I think I have maybe about 2 or 3 servings of carrots remaining from that harvest. So I guess I can't complain too much, but I'm still disappointed with it. But congratulations on growing your carrots successfully for the first time. Yes, the store-bought carrot, especially if you buy them here in Saskatchewan. Huh. I don't know. I don't have a word to describe the flavor of those things because I think they're more carrot cousins than they are carrots really. Yeah, sometimes you get some that is not all that gross, but in general, they're not something you just take up and just eat them raw like that. Not like when you grow your own. LP says, that's so sad. I really hope you have better luck next year. I definitely hope so, although I think it is this year. Yes, I definitely hope so too. Looking forward to those Scotch bonnet pepper, but I think I'm going to be because I sow 5 seeds this time around again, and I think I'm going to watch to see if it germinate, and I'm just going to be on it like Matlock And if they don't germinate, I'm going to be sowing some more seeds as early as possible. Because one of the things that I learned last year, which was my second attempt at growing Scotch bonnet, is that the hotter the pepper, the more time growing time it needs. So making sure they say you can start your Scotch bonnet in March, early March, but I make sure that I'm starting in January. That way, if they don't grow properly, I have February to start and I'll have March to start. But I'm trying to get as early as I can. Let's see, LP says, "Oh no, Anne, you too? How disappointing." Yeah, it is very disappointing. But I guess that's all a part of life. Hi, Francisca. Yes, Francisca told me. Let's see. Anne says, "You grew those long sweet pepper for the first time too." Oh, yes, yes, yes. Thank you for that reminder. Those long sweet peppers, they turned out pretty well. The only disappointing thing is that some of them reached maturity, but the vast majority of them were not, didn't have enough growing time. And it's not that they didn't have the growing time because I started them pretty early, but because again, because of the curly top virus, everything just slowed right down. And then this year's weather was just oh, through the roof. One minute it's cool and nice, one next minute it's cold, another minute it's hot. And the drought, we had drought the entire growing season this year. And then August, when the growing season is starting to close down, we got all the rain. We got 1 week of rain. I had 3 tanks, 3,000 3,000 gallon tanks full of water, plus I had 4 55-gallon drums of water and nothing to do with them. I'm like, really? What about all this time during the growing season? Where were you? Yes, man. So I end up having to throw away most of the water. The only good thing is that now I don't have to find water to look after my worms over the course of the winter. Usually, I would shovel up the snow from outside into these 55-gallon drums and then use the water for my worms. But because of that little rain that we got in August, I was able to transfer the water to some drums in the garage. So now I don't have to shovel snow, thank God. Yes. But yes, those I grew those long sweet peppers for the first time. And I also grew both the mini and the San Marzana tomatoes for the first time too. And those produce well. They produce pretty well. And a funny story about those San Marzano tomatoes. My kids thought it was funny. I was noticing that every time I go out into my dining room, I'm seeing tomato seeds on my walls and on my table, and I'm like, what's going on here? Why every now and then I'm seeing a burst tomato here and there, and I'm seeing seeds there? Because those tomatoes are so plump, the kids would take the tomatoes and squeeze them and then flash all over the place, and they think that is funny. And then the worst part of it is not just the fact that they're wasting the tomato, but that they wouldn't clean up the mess. They would leave it there for me to come and clean up. But they thought it was funny to be squishing those tomatoes. The things that kids do. Oh Lord. Let's see. LP says, yeah, I love basil. Blue spice is incredible flavorant or fragrant. Okay, blue spice, is that one of the various basils? The fragrance didn't translate as strong to flavor, but I will grow more of it. Okay. I've never heard of the blue spice. Please send me the chocolate mint. Yes, I put a few seeds. I didn't really get a lot of seeds. I got 10 seeds, so I put four of them in a package for you. Okay, LP says that's another one of those trolls. Okay. Let's see. No pieces. Oh no, I'm right. You too? How disappointing. Okay, I passed that already. Okay. Mom is saying hi to Chanel. Okay, so you like Basil to Brooklyn giraffe. If I'm to be honest, I don't really use basil. I just said I was going to grow them in 2021 and I grew them. I still have them in my fridge. I was thinking that I need to use them, but I've never really used them. But I'm gonna get around to it. And P says, I'm having a hard time getting winter squash because the vine borers get to them first, but I did get summer squash. Okay, yeah, I remember you saying how much of a trouble you had with those vine borers. Hopefully, this year will be a lot better where that is concerned. LP says, that's a smart move, letting them grow up and get strong and healthy first. Yeah. Okay, mom says sweet potato is our favorite ground food. Okay, nice. Brooklyn says, thank you so much. Oh, you're very welcome. Oh, hi, Urban girl. Haven't seen you in a long time. How you doing, girl? Yes, we are happy and healthy. I hope your family is happy and healthy too. Brooklyn says, Healthy, are you treating the vine borer pest with anything? I had the same problem last summer. They reunited all of my courgettes. Oh, they ruined all of your courgettes? Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Oh, thank you, Kiki. Let's see. Okay, LP is saying hi to Urban Girl. Okay. Hi, Malurth. I hope I get that right. Hey, I am so happy to see you live stream. So much love here from Denmark. Okay, thank you. I'm glad you were able to join us, or you are able to join us. Yes, sweet potato is really a nice food. In fact, it is described as a power food or a superfood. Yes, sweet potato has so many different benefits and so many different nutrients. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're stranded somewhere where you don't have access to a lot of food, you want to make sure you have a sweet potato on you. A roasted sweet potato would be nice. Let's see. And White says thank you. Okay, LP says to Brooklyn, I didn't treat them with anything this year. I cut the stem off my summer squash and dug some grubs out. I also picked eggs off when I saw the moth, but that is not practical. Okay. Um, I know some people say that when they have the grubs, they will actually, once they see any little spot like a hole or a little decaying spot on the stem close to the root, they would cut that section and open it out, and you will find the grub in there. Another thing that gardeners tend to do when they find that they have these root borers is that somewhere past where the root borers are or the vine borers are, they would cover a portion of the stem with soil, and then that portion of the plant will actually start producing roots, and that will become the new base of the plant, and then you can just cut off the damaged portion and get rid of it afterwards. And then I think some suggest as soon as you have the plants growing that you use aluminum foil to wrap around the base of the plant to prevent these pests from getting to it. Oh yes, yes. I think that's what LP is saying here, covering it with aluminum plant foil and plant some out later in hope that I miss the season. I miss their season. Okay, let's see. Um, LP says, "Well, I am sick, urban girl. Otherwise, I'm good. I take a test tomorrow to see if it is the big ugly, or just a cold. Oh, I hope, I hope it is not the big ugly. Hopefully, it's just a cold. Let's see. Yes, urban girl says, feel better soon, hon. LP says, I feed cooked sweet potatoes to my birds because it is so nutritious. Then I had butter for myself. Oh, yes. Whether you cook it or you roast it, I used to love when we have the wood fire going and you just put the sweet potatoes underneath the hashes and let it stay there and the heat would roast it or bake it. Then you just slice it open and put your butter in there. Oh, it is so delicious. Let's see. LP says, thank you. I think so. Brooklyn says, LP, thanks for the tip about using foil. I'm going to try that. Okay, good. Urban Girl says, yes, the stem reroot very quickly and easily, which is awesome because then you get to save the plant. Okay, LP says it's mild, so she feels blessed. Han says, I hope it is just the flu and nothing else. Definitely wouldn't want you to be very sick at all. And I'm sure your worms wouldn't want you to be very sick at all, too. Let's see, Urban Girl says, just wanted to visit and show my love. Have a great day, great evening, everyone. Same to you, my dear. Take care. Let's see, wonderful Urban Girl. Great to see you. Stay well. Yes. So, still on the topic about what we have experienced this year, whether it is good or bad, how we've dealt with problems or challenges. So this year, I thought for sure I've used up all the space that I could for my garden and couldn't get any more. But then I decided that I'm going to turn my tiered worm bin into a raised bed. So I took down the upper layer and relocated it. So I found a little spot for it in the garden. And then the base of it remains in place. So now I end up with two more raised beds. So the one that I was able to remove, that is going to be used for my cool weather crops since as it is on the south side of the property. So yes, next year I will have more growing space. But hi, Connecticut Worms and Garden. Yeah, so the only reason why I didn't, why I took down the tiered worm bin is because of how short our growing season is, or how short, oh, yes. So because of that, the tiered worm system is not really practical because it is an outdoor system and then the worms are just going to be in it for 3 months. So with the space that it occupies, the worms are not going to multiply to fill both levels. So I figured since as I'm already putting worms in my compost heap, then it doesn't make sense to keep the tiered system. It's just a waste of space. So I converted it into raised beds, and I'm looking forward to see how those beds are going to be producing this year. Keep saying next year. Help pieces exactly. They're counting on me. I have 5 bins now. Oh, you go, girl. So how are you doing, Lisa? Okay, LP saying hi to Lisa. LP says, so exciting to expand growing space. It definitely is. I'm just thinking, so one, I know that it is going to be for my cool weather crop. Still trying to figure out what crop exactly I'm going to be putting in there this year. I'm thinking maybe Chinese cabbage or one of those cool weather crops that I really love the most will be going in there. We'll see. But for the other one, I'm still trying to figure out what to put in there. But the good thing is that having it gives me the opportunity to rotate my plants. So we'll see what goes in there. Let's see. LP says, okay, okay, Lisa, thank you. See, Lisa says, White started packing your seeds gift today, up to 50 packages of seed, but still not done. Oh my goodness. I'm sure I'm going to have enough to share with others. It's going to be exciting though. Let's see. So my favorite is still fairly high, and I have a bad cough and congestion still, but I'll get. Okay. LP says, This was my first year successfully growing peppers, which was exciting, but some took so long to mature. I'm trying to learn how best to plant according to available sun. Yes, one of the biggest drawbacks that we face this year as gardeners is the bipolar weather throughout the summer, because either it is flooding or it's we're having drought or it's just too cold or it's just too hot, but there was never really any in between. It's always one extreme or another, and the plants just didn't know what to do. But hopefully next year will be better, and if it is not better, at least I hope we'll find a way to counteract these challenges, because really, with what is going on across the globe, expecting it to be better is, it's good to have hope, but at the same time I don't think it is very practical, because everything just keeps getting worse. So I guess rather than hoping for better, which we should do, we should be planning, okay, what if we have a situation similar to what we had in 2021? How can we deal with it to get the best out of our produce? So that is the mindset that I'm going to be going forward with for 2022 growing season. Okay, you mean fever and not favor and not favor. Okay. Han says, I'm reducing my growing space and I'll be growing a lot less than before. Okay. Yes, I guess that will make it a lot manageable, more manageable for you. Let's see. LP says, Oh, shoot, Lisa, I'm sorry to hear that. That's no good, but you'll beat it. Yeah, definitely. LP says, Han, I hope that reduction is better for you, more successful. And Lisa says, Thank you, LP. LP says, We had rain in the beginning, so I didn't have to do much. Then we didn't get as much, and I don't think I kept up well enough. Excuse me. So that's another lesson. Excellent mindset, White Davy. Thanks for sharing. Okay, you're welcome, my dear. Yes. And another thing this year, another challenge that I faced this year is that at the end of the growing season in 2020, I put a lot of compost in my um, raised beds, because most of my raised beds were built in 2020. Some of them were built in 2018 and 2019, but a lot of them were built late in 2020. So even though I was growing in them, they still didn't have a lot of soil in them. So I was trying to cheat and to use a lot of compost to raise the volume in them. So I added about 6, 7 inches of compost, and this is like raw, well broken down compost. So unfortunately for those raised bed, when I planted out the crop that I started indoors, a lot of them died. So I learned my lesson because the compost was just too strong for them. Yes, so I learned my lesson. I didn't do that this time around after harvesting at all. In fact, I didn't even add any compost to the raised bed after this growing season because the amount that I added in 2020 is enough to last me. So I think for this year, for this growing season, I'm just going to be using just the worm casting and no compost. Let's see. Connecticut says, after my spinal cord injury and paralyzation, let's see, where am I? Yes, I went without gardening for 1 year and it drove me crazy. So I did it from my wheelchair and following 4 years and now. Okay. I can just imagine because when I think of not having a garden, and even like now when there is no growing season, it is it is something that can drive you crazy. The only good thing is that I have my worms, so they are a big source of distraction. But if I didn't have my worms, I'd be going bonkers. I can't see myself not growing, which is one of the reasons why I like to start plants early indoors too, because then I feel like yes, I'm growing something. Yes, the connector says, I can walk again, and despite all the constant pain, I use every inch of my land to garden. Oh, wow. Wow. I'm glad that you're able to move around freely again. That's pretty good. But every inch of your yard to grow stuff, you must be one busy girl. Let's see. Han says, my pepper took forever too. I have started my sweet peppers and Scotch bonnet pepper seedlings, and most of them have germinated, but now I need to get rid of the fungus gnats before they kill them. Oh, yes. I'm going to be sending out the stuff for that for you pretty soon. Let's see. LP says, congrats, Lisa. That is inspiring. It is, isn't it? And and says LP, I think it will help. LP says good luck, Han. Lisa says thanks LP. I have more metal in me than a hardware store has, but I'm going to be miserable either way, so I might as well grow my own veggie and enjoy the sun. I agree with you. If you're going to be suffering either way, you might as well suffer in a way that you're going to at least gain some benefits from it. Let me see. Mom says, I pray all of you who are not very well will be better soon. See, Lisa says, I love my worms to keep me busy. I think they are sick of my hand in their bins. I guess you're just finding all sorts of excuse to be playing in their bins, right? Yeah, I don't know. The ones that I have indoors here. Even after I feed them and I know that they're not going to need any food for a while, I'll just come find an excuse. Oh, let me see if they finish the food just so I can play around with them. Yeah, I don't know. Gardening and looking after worms is so relaxing. Let's see. Lisa says, well, I don't know freely. Still use my wheelchair most day, but I can walk. Okay, which is good. In my garden, I do everything from the ground, scooting on my butt. I've got an extremely, I've gotten extremely good at it. Okay, cool. and says she doesn't disturb her worms. I only had food to the bin. That must be why your population of worms just grows so rapidly, because they do like to be left alone, but most of us find it a challenge to leave them alone. And one another thing that I found disappointing this year for my garden was my corns. Usually I'd have a really nice harvest of corns, but this year um, the corns send out the tassel very early, and then it took forever for the silk of the corn to come out, which means that by the time the silk emerged, all of the pollens would have fallen off the corn and off the tassel already. So a lot of them did not get pollinated. So I was quite disappointed with the harvest because I do look forward to my corns. I'm not a fan of sweet corns at all, so I love my corns waxy. So I've been growing the lint corn or flint corns. Yes, I've been growing the flint corn because it tastes closer to the ones that we are used to in Jamaica. But this year was a big disappointment where that is concerned. So we'll see what happens this year with them. Hopefully, I'll have a much better harvest. Lisa says, "Oh, my worms know me by name, and I think they warn each other like, here she comes again. Uh oh. But in 2 weeks, I will be starting my seedlings, so that's gardening again finally. Oh, cool. Nice. When does your growing season start, Lisa?" So you have tried corn many years. The squirrels, chipmunks, deers, and even the black bear destroy them. I even put an electric fence around it, and the ox flew in from above and devoured it. Oh Lord, it looked like you had it really bad with those corns. Yeah, I don't know. Don't know what to suggest where that is concerned, because corns are one of those things that grow pretty tall. So covering them over wouldn't even be much of an option, especially if you're going to be growing a lot of them. So it's different each year. Normally, I can put things outside the third week of May, but this last year we had frost on June 8th. Oh, we're in the same boat then, because this our growing season, the last week in May, there are some who start like the cool weather crop late April, early May, but then in general, the growing season start about the 21st or somewhere there about in May. But oh, bye, mom. But this year we weren't able to put anything apart from cool weather crop out until the first week in June, like the end of the first week in June. Yeah, it was just too cold. And says, I really wanted to grow purple okra, but I cannot get the seeds here in UK and aubergine. I started aubergine seeds, but no germination so far. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're in zone 5B, Lisa. Let's see, I'm sending you lots of cold crop seeds. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you said you have the purple or red okra, right, Lisa? Maybe you can put some of those seeds in there as well. Okay, LP says, bye for now, Joyce. Thanks for your prayers. Um, yes, she does. I'm answering for her. Okay, so let's see now where we're at. My memory is not good, so I have to jot down the things that I want to talk about. Let's see. LP says, Lisa, hats off to you for making the most of your situation. Definitely. You see, life has so many challenges that it throws our ways, and some of them we cannot get rid of. And I find that things drag you down more when you allow it to prevent you from doing what you can be doing if you sit and feel sorry for yourself. So staying positive is always one way to overcome, even though you don't really get rid of the challenge, but at least it helps to cope with the challenge. So indeed, you're doing pretty well, Lisa. Keep up the good work. Find encouragement for the rest of us. Okay, you said you have a lot of the red okra. Let the cut. Lisa says, thank you, LP. That is very kind of you. And Han says, yes, she needs the red okra. Let's see. Baker's Creek ships to the UK and they sell red okra. Okay, good to know. So you guys have been talking about your gardening, the ups and downs with the garden. But what about your worm farm? Have you had ups and downs with your worm farm this year? Has it been all good? Excuse me. Yeah, so the biggest challenge that I face for 2021 with my worms is something I have never seen happen before since I've been in Canada. The temperature in February went down to minus 55, the actual temperature, not what it feels like. Went down to minus 55 for a few days. Ooh, that was cold. So I was there dragging myself, oh, I'm not gonna go out there. Oh no, I'm not gonna go out there. My worms will be fine. I'm not going out there at all. And for 2 weeks, I didn't go out because it was just so unusually cold. And then I said, you know what? I think I need to go check on the worms. 2 weeks is as much time as I can allow. And when I went outside, when I went into the garage, 14 of my worm bins froze. 14 of them. So the three lower shelves, they all of them froze. And then some of them that are on the shelf that is up against the exterior wall of the garage, some of them were partially frozen. So that section of the bin that is touching the wall, that portion of it froze. Thankfully, I mustered up the courage and went out when I did, because if not, I would have lost my worms. Because worms, depending on the type of worms, they may not be able to survive freezing temperatures. And the red wrigglers are among those that cannot really survive freezing to some extent. So these are my red wriggler bins that froze. So I relocated the bin somewhere in the garage where it was much warmer, those that were frozen. And some of the worms, some of the red wrigglers escaped the bin, so those died. The ones that were frozen, thankfully, they thawed out and they were quite all right. And I have never seen so many cocoons before. It's like they realized what was happening and they just laid their cocoons like crazy. So I'm thankful that I was able to rescue them, though. I wish I had gone outside, braved the cold, and gone outside a little earlier, because I could have prevented them from experiencing that. And it could have prevented those that died from dying if I had gone out earlier. So this year, well, not this year, the end of last year, December, for a good while, we've been experiencing weathers that feels like between minus 45 and minus 50. So although it is cold and I hate it, I brave it every now and then. So usually I'd go out and look after my worms like every Thursday and Friday. I'm out there like Monday, I'm out there Tuesday, I'm out there Wednesday, I'm out there Thursday and Friday. The only way I don't go out is if circumstances does not allow me to go out, but I'm out there practically every day, even if it is just to walk into the garage and look at them and see that they're okay, because I don't really want them to go through that experience again. Let's see. Lisa says, White, you are absolutely right. I can sit on the couch and be in pain, or I can go outside and hear the insects, smell the flowers, and munch on veggies as I read. I choose one that brings happiness. True, yes. You see, Han says her worms are always good and happy. Yes, your worms are native to your region, so they don't mind the temperature swings. But my worms that I have, they're not native to this environment at all. So in fact, this environment is not suitable for humans to live in. I don't know what I'm doing here. LP says, have done some experimenting with bedding, and I'm not yet sure if it was a good idea. Okay. Lisa says, oh no, 14 been froze. Well, they will have cocoons that should hatch. Yes, definitely. LP says, I would have done the same, White David. That cold is serious. Oh, yes. I try to hide away from it as much as I possibly can. But after that experience with my poor little worms, now I'm going out even more than I would normally do. I'm just hoping that it won't continue. Unfortunately, it seems as if we're going to be having these extreme cold for quite a while. So I might have to be out there far more than usual, but we'll see. Hopefully, there'll be some break in between. Let's see. Um, Lisa says if you can save up empty plastic water or soda bottles, you can fill them with hot water and lay it on each worm bin, and it will keep them warm for many, many hours. I have done that before. Yeah, my the way my worm shelf is set up, it only has enough space to fit the bins. And then I usually keep my bins full or almost full, so the chances of getting a plastic bottle in there is pretty tricky. Yeah, but that method really does work. And then this summer, with the temperatures fluctuating like that, because usually by May to June, I would be able to put my worms outdoors. This year, I wasn't able to put my worms outdoors until late June rather than May, because it was so cold. And then the temperature is just up and down. So even though my worms were thriving, they didn't do as well as they did outdoors in the previous years because it was just one extreme to the other. Lisa says, well, I think you need to make more space inside then. I love how you turned your daughter's old bed into worm shelving. Amazing. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so the fluctuating temperatures over the summer didn't allow my worm population for those worms that I put outdoors. Usually every year I would put all my worms outdoors in my compost heap and in the tiered worm bin system, but last year I only put some of my worms outdoors and then keep some in the garage. And I think I'm going to be doing the same thing this year. I think I'm going to be putting maybe 1 or 2 pounds in each of my compost bin. I no longer have the tiered bins, so there's no worms going in that. And then all of the rest are going to be staying in the garage. So we'll see how they do, those that are going to be outdoors, if they're going to do better than they did last year. Let's see, my outdoor worm bin got ravaged by ants this year, and I tried everything. Finally, I learned of using ashes, and that saved them. Okay, yeah, I'm glad that at least you were able to figure out a way to rescue them from those ants. But the good thing though is that usually my worms would start slowing down as soon as it reached August, September, because the place starts to get cold. But I noticed that for 2021, from September through to December, they were not slowing down at all. Mark you, we had some warmer than usual temperatures during those months, and then we had some colder than usual temperatures during those months as well. But they didn't seem to be slowing down at all. So I don't know if maybe since as the last week has been so cold, if they're going to be slowing down or they're going to continue as they have been doing for the past 4 months. So it will be interesting to see what they do. In fact, they have been doing so well. Usually, when I harvest my castings, when I'm taking the worms indoors, I usually harvest all of my castings at that time, and I would not harvest again until February, March. But this time, this year, I had to harvest like pretty much every month. So I was harvesting September, October, November, December. Yes. So we'll see what they do this time around. Hopefully, they'll continue the same. But I won't be too disappointed if they slow down because that is what is expected of them. Yes, and another interesting adventure that I went on for 2021 is that I actually started my first African Nightcrawler bin, which is exciting, but the first couple of months was very tricky because you know that my region is extremely cold. So it was a struggle, even though the garage is heated, it was a struggle finding a spot that they are most comfortable with in the garage. So I keep moving them from one spot to the other, trying to find somewhere where it's not too hot and it's not too cold for them. So unfortunately, some of them didn't make it. And I had two bins right off the get go. So some of them didn't make it in one of the bins because I had both bins in the garage and then I took one inside and I allowed one to stay in the garage. So those that stayed in the garage, some of them died. The ones that were in the house, they seemed to be doing all right, although they were always on the surface of the bin because even though they're indoors, the bin was just sweating, sweating, sweating. So they finally settled down. They're doing okay now. So I'm looking forward to having my first harvest of castings. So we'll see how that goes too. Let's see. Lisa asked, how do you find the market to sell your worms and casting hats? I mean, the customers. Okay, so they have a free website where you can advertise things that you have to sell here. So occasionally I'll put my worms on that, but the Saskatoon Waste Management Program allow people who sell worm to provide them with their information and then they would put it on the website for you. So that is how I get most of my clients through the Saskatoon Waste Management Program. Yes, and then some by word of mouth as well. And then because I do the YouTube videos, so sometimes people will say, "Okay, you do worms. Do you sell your worms?" And but for the most part, my clients come from the Saskatoon Waste Management website. Let's see. Oh, that's awesome that they provide that service. Do you make a lot of sale? Does it cover the cost of raising them? Well, there are times when I reject orders because I want to grow the worm population, so I don't want to be selling more than I'm able to keep up with because I don't really want the population to go beyond a certain point. So what I try to do is during the warmer months, so spring and summer, when most people are interested in getting worms, I'll sell during that time. But then during the cold months, I don't sell any because I'm allowing the worms to build. the population. So for now, because I am interested in increasing the number of worms that I have, I don't sell to everyone that orders worm, even if it is summer, because once I'm going to sell and I see where it's going to go beyond a certain level, because I don't only sell the worms, I sell the castings, and then I have a few, uh, I don't know if I would call them large scale, but they do greenhouses and sell the greenhouse seedlings. So I have a few clients that does that, and then they want castings to buy in large amount. So I can't really allow the worm population to go down. So for that reason, sometimes I will reject sales. My worms don't really cost me anything to raise really, because apart from making the shells and buying the bins, there is no expense to me for raising the worms. Everything else is either the compost that I feed them is free, because Saskatoon has a free compost depot, and you can collect any amount of compost you want. Even if you're going to enough to fill the house, you can collect all that they have if you want. In fact, i- if you go there every day, there's no way you can finish what they produce there, because they collect all of the organic matter from the communities, the entire city, and then they compost it and give it back to the community. So that is one of the things that I use to feed them. So that is free. The only thing it costs me is the gas to go and pick up the compost, and then all of my garden refuse and the food scraps from the house. And sometimes I go to restaurant and collect food scraps, and it's only the gas transportation cost. So pretty much it is taking care of my worms is free. The only time it becomes an expense is in the winter, where I have to be running the furnace in the garage, but apart from that, it is free. So I would say yes, it does cover the expense. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, that's awesome that they provide that service. Do you make a lot of sale? Does it? Oh, I think I read that already. I believe you told me you had 60 bin. Is that correct? Yes, it's actually 70 bins, but because the time is cold, so gradually what I've been doing is combining more than one bin so that I can remove all those bins from the lower shelves. That way they won't freeze like they did in February. So yes, so now I'm up to, let's see, it's now I have less than 60 bins because I've been combining. CLP says, I'm not sure what my favorite crop to grow is this year. Probably tomato, pepper, especially shis- shishito. Okay, never heard of that variety. Interesting. Let's see, what was I was looking forward to my romaine lettuce and my Chinese cabbage, but I'm pretty disappointed where that is concerned. Yeah, they were big. Even my lettuce this year, it's the first time I'm growing lettuce and I'm disappointed with the produce. But then the curly top virus did a number on practically all of my garden, so a lot of it did not come to much. But I guess I still can't complain because I had a really nice harvest overall. So I guess I can't complain. If I didn't have a harvest, then I'd be making noise. Yeah. So anyway, I am going to be saying goodbye to you guys in a little while because I should be on my way to work at the moment. Let's see. Lisa says my town does fall leaf pickup, and every year they put out compost available to everyone for free. You just have to go to the town hall and get it, but it runs out every day. It's not unlimited. Okay. See, and says my favorite would be Scotch bonnet and turnips. However, this year have got a few seeds that I never grew before. Okay. Oh, hi, John Hughes. How are you? Awesome. Oh, I just got here. Okay. Were you have you moved already, John? Well, an update. Closed on the new place, so moving soil will be imminent. Okay, cool. Nice, nice. Yes. So the compost depot that they have here in Saskatoon, it is pretty extensive. I don't know the extent, the size of the property that they're using to compost. The only thing that I know is that when you go there, you only have access to the drop off point if you are dropping off trees and grass clippings and stuff like that. So you have your green bins that the city would come and pick up. And then for people who does landscaping, or if you're a builder and you have to remove trees and stuff like that, you would take it to the compost depot. So you can get compost from there, or you can get wood chips from there, and they would compost the wood chips. In other words, they would make it go through the heat process so that it would kill off any pests that might be in the wood chips. But you're only allowed to go to the drop off point, and you are only allowed to go to small heaps, that the heaps of compost or the wood chips that they put out. But as far as your eyes can see, it's just compost. I'm talking compost hills that are probably one of their hills might be able to make two of my house, counting the basement and the main floor. Some pretty big hills, and as far as your eyes can see, it's just compost. So there is no chance. In a given year, I don't think they have ever used all of the compost that they can produce. So it is pretty extensive. Let's see. Connecticut said, "Can I come?" Oh, sure. If you want to come and collect compost, the expense might be a lot though. John says, "Saving plants as paramount with the freeze we just had." Okay. John says, "We'll uncover in a few days. Have as many plants inside as an RVer can accommodate, plus worm bins." Okay, cool. You're gonna have your hands full with all that moving. Let's see. Lisa says, "I so wish our community would collect grass clippings and green waste. They just don't. They could do so much with it. But I compost and have worms, so nothing of mine goes to waste." Good. And John says, "Sure." LP says, "Good job. Good luck as well. Congrats, John." Yes, I agree. It will be fun stuff. Yeah, so I'm going to be closing down in a minute or so because I need to get to work. Let's see. LP says, "My town does leaf pickup too. Like you, Lisa, I wish our town had green recycling." Okay. I've never used any of their green recycling bins though, because I compost everything. I compost everything that my property produce, so there's no need for me to get their green bins. Let's see. Lisa says, "Okay, John, I'm packing my bags now. Pick me up." Okay, good night and take care. Good night, everyone. I'm going to allow about 30 seconds to see what comments you guys are writing, and then I'm going to say goodbye to you. So it was really nice having you guys on the live. Thanks for sharing your experiences. Yeah, there's so much to learn. It was fun. So I am thinking that on Friday, all being well, I will be having my 1000 sub celebration giveaway. Still haven't worked out the kinks yet, but I think I'll spend some time to do that. How to go about working it out. But anyway, thank you guys for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful evening and that you'll all stay safe. Let's see. Lisa says, good night, everyone. This was fun. Everyone stay healthy, happy, and safe. Don't forget to bother your worms frequently. John says, have to make your way to Texas. I have a three spare bedroom unless I keep worms in house. Yes, each of the worm bins can get a room for themselves. LP says, thank you, Lisa and Hans. Same to you. I think my worms need some attention now that you say that. All right, John. Well, send me an Instagram or YouTube message. Okay. So you guys stay safe, and we'll see you again hopefully on Friday. CLP says, right, John, you've got two spare bedrooms and one warm room.